Well, hello, everybody. It is us. Here we are again. Yeah, by popular demand, you've been evoking us, and here we are at your command and in your presence. We are the Violet Flame Triad of the molecular order. It is February 27th, 2025, and we are discussing some of the miracles that are taking place. Oh, speaking of miracles, I had the Mormon missionaries come over and give me a blessing. I never say no to positive energy. So they came over and we hung out for a good 40 minutes talking about philosophy and had a really good time.
Did
Uh,
you- did they buy your book?
yeah, I insisted. If you're gonna give me a blessing, you're gonna buy my doggone book. They they did. Adam Lyman, that's the bishop. He's a real good guy. He's an engineer. He's civil engineer. He's got a whole crew of people working under him. Very successful. And
Where does he work? Where is his office?
and I don't know, New Plymouth somewhere. Um, anyway, they've done a lot of things for us. I had a big pine tree in my backyard, the circumference of which was like that, and it was the big wind came and it almost blew it over the fence. And it was only a matter of time before it succumbed. So he came over with four or five guys and a few chainsaws and a trailer. And he personally climbed clear up that tree and started cutting it down and cutting it down and cutting it down. And instead of the pine tree falling over the fence, all the pieces that he cut down hit the fence. Pretty soon there was no fence. But I didn't take offense. We just built it back up. No, actually, he cut it. He chiseled it down pretty professionally. Hauled it off, didn't charge us anything, just said thank. I offered to pay him. I said, here's $5. It's been a $500 job to hire somebody. He said, no, it's on me. He wants to take some of his boys out and shoot some guns. I said, I got it. I got four 30-30s and about 5,000 rounds of ammo. I said, you want to go do some shooting? Bring some paint cans and we'll blow them up. So they're kind of looking forward to that. Anyway, um, real nice, real nice. I didn't get didn't get any sensation from the blessing. I was hoping that it would solve my pain, but eliminate it, but it's still here.
Did they lay hands on you?
Huh?
Did they lay hands on you?
Oh yeah, laid hands on me. Put some oil on and everything. I said, is that enough oil? I think you're gonna need more oil. It was just a little bitty bit. Oh, a little dabble do you? Okay, so I think I'm on the mend though, so hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody have any pearls of wisdom, revelations from the last week, success stories? Make something up, Ken.
Oh, let's see.
There
Hey,
I
hey,
was climbing that tree trying to get away from that boa constrictor, and there we
hey.
climbed all the way halfway up, and this big tiger came jumping towards me. And I said, oh, heck fire. So I ducked just as that boa constrictor struck out at me. And by darn, if it didn't wrap himself around that tiger, and they went tumbling to the ground, and come to find out, they was friendly towards each other, the tiger and the snake. And they kind of walked off together into the deep forest as pals.
What's that medicine you've been taking?
Well, I got some to share. I got
Anyway, yeah, that's the only story I had for this week. We did have a snake problem. Uh, so I've been building I put in a small wire, like rabbit pen wire or whatever. So, the the snakes can't come in our carport and wild cats.
Well, that's good. Snakes and cats. I was born in
No,
the year of the snake.
our next door neighbor said they saw a poisonous snake, probably a cobra or something. It went under our carport and then it was climbing up into the rafter of our carport. And then one of our friends, they had a cobra come in their house. We've got a video of it.
Really?
Well,
They
uh,
they they had us like a sliding door, and apparently it wasn't closed all the way. I'm not sure, but they've got a video of that cobra, and it was striking. Uh, they had a stick, and it was striking at them right there in their living room.
Well, you can capture that venom. It's worth money.
Yeah, these are deadly ones. They say if you get bitten by one of those, you don't have much of a chance to live.
Really?
Maybe about half an hour and you're gone.
Does
you ought to
maybe
get a couple of mongoose.
yeah, get a mongoose.
Mongooses.
Yeah, mongoose.
Yeah, they need
Mongoose.
the cobras are really the cobra population is really growing on this island. They need to do something about it.
But when snakes raise hell, call Harwell. Pest control. Let us pray for you. Well, be careful then. I hear they're good eating. Tastes like chicken.
I don't know. I know the Filipinos eat those big pythons.
Oh, I don't
They
know.
have world record snakes here, I think, because they had one here in Bohol that's 26 feet long.
Wow.
It's not it's dead now, but they have big ones here.
26 feet long?
That's what they said.
That's pretty long. Well, here's what I passing out not the latest Zoom class, but the one from February 6th. That was a couple weeks ago. And this is the little caption I added to it. The Violet Flame Triad discussed how humanity is battling Maya glamour and illusion, and how our consciousness is steadily rising to the plane of the mind, where we are receptive to greater light and truth. The kingdom of God is now within our grasp. How are you using your power to manifest the kingdom of God this week? Join the Gathering of Lights project and let's make it so. That's what I got. Two. Had to edit it a little bit. Your power to manifest the kingdom of God. Okay, good enough. Anyway, that's what's going out. You know, it may not be exactly what we talk about, but people like reading the caption, and I think the caption kind of stimulates their imagination and their spiritual response. Anyway, that's what I put. I think humanity is battling Maya, glamour, and illusion, and I think the consciousness of humanity is steadily rising.
Well, I think there's got to be a lot of stress before we see any great movement like that.
Well, you don't think we're seeing stress today? Look
Well,
at
I think that, yeah, but people are just complaining. I think what has to happen is people have to be so fed up with things as they are that they're really looking for something different.
I think they're going to get better now. I think we're on an upward trend. We got Russia and Ukraine communicating. You know, we've got things in the Middle East coming to fruition. We've got the borders being sealed. We got things happening. So, you know, I just think people are waking up. So we'll see.
We'll see. There's a lot of people who are losing their job. My daughter here, her man friend, is one of those who got cut because of this last thing. He was working for BLM. He was working for the BLM, and they said, "You're out of here."
Well, a lot of fat's being cut, and it's going to save the taxpayers a lot of money in the end. And there's always something people can do to make money.
Well, there's going to be a lot of people collecting unemployment.
Yeah, for a while. It'll stimulate economic growth in other dimensions, in other areas. People, like self-employment. I've never worked for anybody, and I do all right. Just find a way, find a need and fill it. Um, but putting the border, controlling the illegals from coming in, I think is going to make a big difference too. Anyway, I like to think that the hardest times are behind us. If I can get over this ailment, I can certainly agree
Yeah,
with.
it's all behind you now.
It's going to be all behind me here. Well, we're up to talking about the interlude between War and Peace. This was given August 1942. There's always an interlude, whenever the wave goes up, that stops, and then it goes down, and then it stops, and then it goes up, and then, so there's always an interlude between one trial and another. And there'll always be another trial. Don't think there won't. If there were no trials, there would be no growth. There is an insistent demand from the many thousands who in the past have read the pamphlets and articles which I have written that I say something about the coming period of rehabilitation and of what can be done whilst the war is still in progress. You can say that today, what can be done while humanity is still in conflict. To prepare for usefulness at that time. When the war broke out, I published an article entitled The Present World Crisis, and in it tried to trace the origins of the conflict and the factors which made this catastrophe possible. Later, another article appeared called The Coming World Order, which sought to hold out to the suffering world a vision of a material and spiritual future, which the hearts of men have long demanded. Thus, an attempt was made to deal with both the past and the future. More at that time was not possible owing to the disunity existing among those nations which today form the United Nations. There was also a lack of understanding and a selfish perspective among those nations at that time neutral. Above everything else was the fact that the issues involved had to be settled by humanity itself, and it was not then possible to foretell with any accuracy what humanity would do. Even the most enlightened of men and the spiritual leaders of the race could not judge what line mankind would take or whether there were enough clear-sighted people in the world who could and would sweep the mass of men into effective opposition to the Axis powers, which were, as you know, Japan, Germany, and Italy. The question was, would world fear and universal selfishness dominate, or would the spirit of freedom and the love of liberty be strong enough to weld the free nations into one united and steadfast whole? So he was doing things back then. He was writing articles, you know.
Oh yeah, but Alice was writing the articles, and he was giving her information.
Well, he was right. It was his material.
I just wonder how much, when you think of the fact that she had a certain English language and he didn't have an English language.
Well, I
How
think he
much?
did. What makes you think he didn't?
Well, I think that he sent the ideas to her. She had to interpret it into language.
I think he gave her the words. I don't think he gave her ideas. There's too many words here. I think he had a good command of the English language. What do you think, Cindy?
Well, I think that they have been working together for uh, building up to this particular incarnation of Alice's for some time through several incarnations, I believe. That might be in some unpublished papers of Alice Bailey. And at at one point, she said that she got so good at understanding the Tibetan in her head that it all came very quickly to her. Now I don't recall if she said, it had to have been, she had to have been hearing it in English. This is what I'm
Well,
is
I'm
what
not
I'm
sure that he transmitted in English. How would
Yeah.
he have done it?
Yeah, because she didn't understand Tibetan, but that was my understanding of it.
They probably did work together in a few lifetimes.
Yeah, it was, they had to prepare for this because that telepathy thing, was quite difficult
Well, especially when you have 22 books that are like from here to the floor.
and so detailed.
Yeah, and it's so detailed that, maybe she understood what he was saying, but I think he transmitted in perfect English. I think he
The
has
other
a real good command of the English language.
the other thing is, in, like, for instance, esoteric astrology, the book. Alice didn't know one thing about astrology,
Right.
and that is a really detailed book. So, I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Well, in esoteric astrology, the Tibetan says that this book is not about astrology; it's about the seven rays and
exactly.
how they come through the various constellations.
Yeah.
Right, but she didn't have that depth of a knowledge, and so yeah, I
No.
think he understood English. I mean, English isn't that hard for a master to master. Okay, let's have somebody else read on. Ken, you want to read a bit? Use your clear voice. Step right up to that microphone.
Today, the issue is clear and the end inevitable. The free nations and the defeated and enslaved little nations are subjectively and practically unified into one intense spiritual determination to win the war. The fate of the Axis nations is therefore unalterably settled, even though at this time of writing they seem to be victorious all along the line. It is only the time of the final victory of right against might which remains as yet the factor of uncertainty. And this is owing to the enormous prepared strength of the aggressor nations and the unpreparedness of the democracies. This unpreparedness is being rapidly remedied. This article is an attempt to indicate the problems and perhaps some of the solutions which must inevitably fill the interlude between the ending of the war and the coming of the world order. It will be necessary to deal with this subject in a broad and general way, for the subject is too vast for us to be intelligently specific. We can, however, consider the immediate work to be done in preparation for the cessation of the war and indicate the first steps which can and should be taken to initiate sound reconstruction processes. The period of rehabilitation and of reconstruction should be the deep concern today of all who love their fellow man. There are those who will consider a study of the coming reconstruction period as premature. They believe, and rightly, that our first immediate concern is to win the war, and with this I am fully in agreement. The will to victory is the first and basic essential, for there will be no true reconstructive activity if the Axis nations triumph. But there are many today whose task is not that of fighting and whose place and function is perforce in the civilian aspects of the life of the nation. These can think and talk and work in preparation for the future. There are others who feel that only the trained expert in the field of economic and political readjustment can approach this difficult problem with any hope of making a useful contribution. Still, others feel that peace is the only thing that matters and that it should be followed by a long period of mental quiet in every country. They believe that people everywhere are too exhausted and unhappy to be ready as yet to undertake any work of rebuilding. Others, again, are so completely pessimistic that they despair of ever reclaiming the world, and they look sadly for a breakdown of all the civilized processes of living. There is some truth in all these points of view. The work of the experts will be sorely needed, but the understanding, interest, and the sustaining power of those whose hearts are aflame with love can alone make their work possible. It will not be the institutionalized activities and the financial enterprise of economic and social workers and government agents which will alone be needed. But above all else, the solution must be found in the uprising of goodwill in the hearts of men. This will provide the right compassionate incentive. Most certainly, the world could be rehabilitated for the purely commercial and selfish reasons, and because trade interchange, buying and selling capacity, financial stability are important factors in world restoration. But these are not the basic motives which should restore humanity to self-respecting and secure living. They will provide the motive power for many men and groups, but not the motive which can produce the true constructive rebuilding of the fabric of human life.
Okay. Well, there you have it. The solution must be found in the uprising of goodwill in the hearts of men. You know, it's amazing the effect that even a smile will have on another person as far as promoting the feeling of goodwill, the feeling of feeling good, and willing a rise in even if it's a degree of happiness on the emotional plane, let alone joy on the soul plane or peace on the mental plane. You know, if everybody would just take a minute and smile at their neighbors and say something positive, if everybody did that, this world would be transformed overnight. It would turn dark to light and negative to positive everywhere. And that's the effect we have on people. So just remember that. You can't wait for some big movement to come along and do it. It's each individual has to uh, do their part in fulfilling the great plan. Thank you, Ken. Okay, Cindy, let's hear what you have to say about the work of Reconstruction.
The work of Reconstruction will be the work of the intelligent men and women of goodwill, and theirs will be the task to restore new life and happiness to humanity. And it is for them I write. Please bear this in mind. I am not writing for technical experts and trained advisors to the government, but to those who have goodwill in their hearts, and to all men, and to who, because of it, want to do their share in bringing tranquility and peace to the world. A peace based on surer values than in the past, and upon sounder planning in the last analysis, it is not peace for which the men of goodwill are working, but for the growth of the spirit of understanding and cooperation. This alone will be strong enough to break down racial barriers, heal the wounds of war, and build a new structure adequate to the intelligent demands of the masses. Sounds like he's talking about right human relations there. In
Yeah,
the early, yeah, uh-huh.
just what we were talking about. He says he's not writing. Um, what did he say? Um,
Yeah, he's not writing for the businessmen and all those.
yeah, the technical experts and the trained advisors, but to those who have goodwill in their hearts. That's what we are just talking about. You know, if you have goodwill in your heart, then you're going to spread goodwill through eye contact, through a smile, through a positive word or two, um, even to strangers. Remember, on the plane of soul, there are no strangers. Once did a seminar called "No Strangers in Paradise," and it was about bringing people who didn't know each other together and realizing that we all had a common thread and denominator, and we just had to get acquainted. So, so there you have it. He's carry on.
In the earlier pamphlets, I sought, along with many other thinking people, to indicate the steps which might be taken to avert an impending cataclysm. Among the most important upon which emphasis was laid was the growth of world goodwill. For goodwill is the active principle of peace. Ooh, I have that highlighted. Goodwill is the active principle of peace. I sought also to stress international understanding, a future of shared planetary resources, and a recognition of a general historically proved guilt in relation to the war, plus those ideas which could have developed in the era of separativeness. In spite of all the efforts of the men of goodwill, of all the peace organizations, and the enlightened work of the world thinkers, educators, and leaders, two things happened which it had been hoped might be averted. The first was a definite and focused precipitation of the spirit of evil and of materialism through the medium of the Axis nations, using the aggression of Japan as the initial focal point and expressing itself later in full force through Germany. The second was the failure of the neutral nations. In the early stages of the war, presumably he's mainly talking about the U.S. there.
Well, the U.S. and Switzerland was a neutral nation.
Right. There was a lot of neutral. Was it the only neutral nation in Europe, though, Switzerland?
I don't know. We'd have to ask Google.
Yeah,
Google would tell us.
kind of curious about that. Definitely, United States was.
Yeah,
Uh,
till
yeah.
41.
Yep. The second was the failure of the neutral nations in the early stages of the war to take the needed steps to ally themselves actively with the nations fighting totalitarianism and their inability to realize the full horror of what lay ahead for mankind. The selfishness of humanity was even more desecrated than was grasped, or deep-seated than was grasped. And the United Nations came into cooperative activity only after 2 years of war and the planned rape of many of the neutral nations. The blindness of the neutral nations definitely upset the calculations of the far-sighted workers for world good and seriously delayed the ending of the war.
Blindness, boy, he really lambasts those neutral
Boy,
nations.
he sure does. Right the way through. Anytime he talks about it.
Well, he's against that and people that talk about it but don't act. He's really against people that are lazy, that have a lot of knowledge but don't do anything with it. He's a man of action. He's written things. He's written 22 books. He has groups of proselytes, whatever, acolytes, disciples that he presides over. He's a very busy and active man, and it bothers him greatly to see people that just rest on their laurels or are inactive when they need to be more active.
Well, he definitely sort of makes a point that pacifism, at least during this war, was on not on the right side.
Was wrong.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Norway started out being a neutral nation, but they were invaded and taken over by the Nazis.
Right. That's what happens, isn't it?
Well, it's possible that Pearl Harbor was a planned attack, and Roosevelt knew about it, but allowed it to happen so that our country would be pulled into the war. Otherwise, we would have just remained neutral, and Hitler could have marched forward and conquered many of the other neutral nations until he became so powerful that no force could have overcome him. So in a way, we had to be pulled into the war. You think about it.
Yeah.
Read another paragraph, Cindy.
The critical point is now past, and the humanitarian grasp of the issues involved and the unity existing among the Allied nations guarantee the inevitable defeat of the Axis powers. Oh, he's kind of making a prediction here.
Well, he kind of is.
Other factors also ensure the ultimate victory of the forces of light, of right, and the freedom of the world. There is not time to enlarge upon them, but they can be listed and people can then see how assuredly they guarantee the triumph of the free peoples of the world. These factors are.
Why don't you read what these factors are, Ed? We want to know.
Well, okay. These factors are: one, the will to victory is steadily growing. Appeasement, pacifism, and uncertainty is steadily dying out. And two, the plight of humanity everywhere as a result of Axis aggression is definitely steadying public opinion and evoking an unalterable determination to end the evil initiated and carried forward by Germany and Japan, aided somewhat unwillingly by Italy. And number three, the resources of the United Nations are vast and are now in process of mobilization. Their mass use and their manufacturing potential are practically inexhaustible and are rapidly being organized. The main power and the resources of Germany and her allies have reached their peak, bringing enormous present potency, but a steady decline is indicated before the future. Number four, the issues in this war are being increasingly clearly realized. Even the ignorant and the prejudiced recognize today that these these issues can be grouped under three major positions, and this enables them to make a personal choice as to loyalties. The democratic position, which is the emphasis upon the four freedoms and the Atlantic Charter, ensuring right human relations and ending of aggression. The totalitarian position, with its emphasis upon world dictatorship, the slavery of many conquered nations, its anti-racial bias and blatant cruelty and terrorism. The apparent and the pacifist attitudes, idealistic and impractical, and finding their focus today in the attitude of Gandhi. I think Gandhi was too concerned with his own situation. And there's a movie on right now, Gandhi. It started again today, and I started watching it before I came down here. But anyway, Gandhi,
Well, he was a pacifist.
well, he was not a pacifist as far as what was going on with his people. He was definitely uh, not a non-pacifist in his actions. He didn't want to turn to violence, but he turned to the kind of non-passive non-passivism that actually gave them the freedom from Britain.
Well, he was an active pacifist.
Yeah, his main goal was what he accomplished to get the independence for India.
Right.
He brings into clear perspective the uncompromising fanatical attitude, which is non-realistic and which will willingly sacrifice lives, nations, and future of humanity in order to attain its object. If Gandhi were to succeed in his objective now, it would participate civil war in India, sacrifice all immediate hope for freedom for that country, permit the Japanese to realize an easy conquest of India, bring about a slaughtering of countless thousands of, and permit Germany to join hands with Japan across Asia, with the appalling probability of totalitarian victory. These 3 points of view are today being clearly realized by men everywhere, and their decision as to loyalties and adherence are clarified. The spirit of freedom is triumphing in every nation, even in the conquered countries, much of the bewilderment of Germany. And the beauty of the human spirit is emerging everywhere, both in the conquered lands and in the nations fighting with their backs to the wall for human liberty. And six, the intense interest in after-war conditions is evidenced by the utterance of leaders and politicians, lecturers, and the spiritually minded men everywhere. This is testified to by the articles, pamphlets, books, speeches, and plans dealing with the New World Order. The forces of rehabilitation and of goodwill are rapidly mobilizing. They constitute a great army within all nations, and they are an inevitable army, but one which is as yet inchoate, uncertain as to method and process, though clear as to the goal and principles.
Well, there's 6 points that he went over. Says the above 6 factors ensure the defeat of the forces of evil and the triumph of the forces of light. And with these as the basis of optimism, we can look ahead with sure hope to the ending of the war, to the demobilization of the armies, to the tranquil passage of the 7 seas, and to the time when fear begins to die out. What then will be the dangers to be offset? For what must we be prepared when the task of reconstruction confronts us? It might be useful to enumerate some of the dangers for which we must be prepared. Let us consider them in the order of their importance. And let's go into that next week because I have to go take some medication and I'm going to have to cut our meeting a little short. um, what do you think we should look for this week? Maybe see the effect that we're having individually on the lives of people around us by connecting with people that we encounter. Maybe a handshake, maybe eye contact, maybe a smile. However, we can spread the energy of peace and goodwill, let it be done.
Right. The attitude of brotherhood and goodwill is very important, even though we don't see it on the news.
We don't have to see it. We can see it in our own lives. I mean, it would be good if we saw more of it on the news, but it's up to each one of us to do our part to spread peace and goodwill.
Right.
Ken, you want to bring us to a close? Maybe say something, a prayer or an invocation, or do an om.
The great invocation.
Okay.
Ooh. Ooh. Ooh.
Oh.
From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men. The purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the rays of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth.
Oh.
Oh.
I just want you guys to know that I look forward every day to this meeting when we can get together as a union of souls with people that I really love, that I enjoy being with, and that's you guys.
I hope you feel better real soon, Curtis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be behind you soon.
Yeah, if I didn't have to rush off, we'd carry on, but we'll stay connected on the plane of soul, go out and do some good this week, and we'll hook up in 7 days hence.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
Ken. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Ed.
You, Curtis.